Hello, welcome back to the channel. The lighting's a little bit different today. I kind of like the shadow that's going on. There's not so much brightness on my face. Let me know what you think. Could switch it up. So I know it's been a little while since I have said hi. I took a little bit of a hiatus. I did not do a March wrap up. So today we are going to do a March and April wrap up. It's May now, but I'm just gonna, get the ball rolling. So I read 23 books in total. I read 13 in March and 10 in April. So we're just gonna jump right into it. I'm trying to be a little bit more concise with my wrap ups because they tend to get long. And I know some people like long videos, but they are very hard to edit. So I'm gonna do my best, okay? We're just gonna start with March, and I'm gonna just go in order of when I read them. The first book that I read in March was Come and Get It by Kylie Reed. I loved this book. It was so good, and I immediately knew that I was going to love it because just right off the bat, we get like the first chapter. It is already steeping. The tea is steeping. Okay. We are following some people that are at the University of Arkansas, I believe. There are mostly students in this story. There is one woman who is a professor for a brief amount of time, but she's also a writer. And so the very first scene that we have is she is coming to the university and she comes to the dorms and she wants to interview some students about weddings for some reason. And so she goes and talks to the students, and what she finds is that these students are privileged and tone deaf, and they have some interesting things to say. And so she is immediately enraptured. She also meets Millie, who is another one of our main characters, and she is an RA in the dorms. And basically, they kind of strike this deal, and they both get something out of it, and it's just scathing. I mean, everyone's motivations are foggy at best, but it was so messy and so real to me. Like, I literally felt like I was reliving my freshman dorm experience, even though these people are not freshmen, but like, that is what my college, like, I know these girls that are in the book that we're talking about. And it's just so crazy to me that Kylie Reed was able to distill that experience into this book and just make it so readable. I mean, just go read this. It was nuanced, but like so unserious at the same time. And I really love how that came across on the page and how she was able to balance that. It was just really unique. I will say one thing is that you are not going to like this if you are looking for a really structured plot. There really wasn't much of that in her last book either. It's kind of just like a glimpse into the life of these characters and what their motivations are. And you do really actually get to know the characters quite well. So I really liked that because that's a huge thing for me. Highly recommend this one. It was 5 stars. This next one was really disappointing to me. The Fury by Alex Michaelides. This one, I'm not gonna lie, the cover is what pulled me in. And right off rip, we are introduced to this narrator who is also one of the main characters. And then his narration style is to just be really in your face about the fact that he was there and he knows things, but he's not reliable. Like, that is made clear from the very get-go. So I did not trust him. And beyond that, the storytelling was fine, but the characters really fell completely flat. I did not believe anyone's motivations. It was all very two-dimensional and like tropey in a way that I didn't really like. The the plot twist and the ending of what happened was so anticlimactic to me. I called it from the get-go. And like, once it happened and we were kind of like pushing toward the end of resolving the climax, I just did not care anymore. So that was upsetting. It is set on a Greek island, and that is pretty cool, but we didn't really even get that much atmospheric stuff going on. Like, it was really more about the plot, all of these different like devices to moving the plot forward that I just thought were a little bit heavy-handed, and it wasn't. I mean, I get what he was trying to do, but it did not work for me. So next I read the graphic novel Who the F Are You by Huda Fahmy. I'm not sure if I'm saying her name correctly, but please correct me if I'm wrong. So this one is it's not autobiographical, but it is based on the author's life. She is Muslim and she grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, and she had this big family and she wears a hijab and dresses very modestly. So this book is about her acclimating to her new school in Dearborn and just being a Muslim girl and going through things and like being a teenager. I really enjoy her humor and I like her like little graphic novel style. It was just a really fun, super quick read. I read this one for the Diverse Baseline Challenge in March. The prompt for this one was to read a book by a BIPOC author with a different religious background than you. And I was not born and raised Muslim. I was born and raised Southern Baptist Christian, and I am no longer practicing. And I love to learn about other religions. So I thought this one was really, really good. And I am going to read the second book that she has out. The next book that I read was Hunger by Roxane Gay. This one was one of my 2024 picks, and I just kind of decided to pick it up. I listened to it on audiobook because she narrates the audiobook. And basically, it is her memoir about being a fat person. I think for most of her life, she has been obese. And she opens the book kind of talking about her experience going to the doctor and getting evaluated for a gastric bypass surgery. And then she has all of these other experiences and explains what it's like to be, a person in a fat body and be in the world where the norm is to have a skinny body. So there's all these things she can't do, like sit in chairs and, be in certain public spaces. She gives a lot of space and empathy to fat people and the experience of being a fat person. And she also shares some really, really vulnerable parts of herself and her journey, some things that she's working through. And she's very self aware and very, very, very mature. Like she has this incredible perspective on herself that I really admire. And she's able to talk about some really tough things that she's processed up until this point, and how those things impacted her life. Because she says in her book that she uses eating as a coping mechanism because of all these certain things like sexual abuse. It's really, really, really dark stuff, but it's also just so admirable how she uses her experiences and her voice to like share her story, because I really related to a lot of things that she was talking about. I'm not obese. I am like a mid-sized person, so I resonate with some of the things that she was saying about having a fat body and like not being able to accept your body. But like I said, I just really love her perspective on things and I love her writing. So I really, really, really enjoyed this. And I think if anyone struggles with their body image or just wants to learn about like that aspect of being inclusive in general, I think you should totally read this. And if you're new to Roxane Gay, I think you should read this too, because she tells you a bit about herself and her life. And I think that's a great place to start. Great memoir. This one, I gave 4 stars because, I didn't, it's difficult to write a memoir. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with this title right now. I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. So I'm caught up on everything that she has published now. This is super interesting. It's her first paranormal romance. If you know me at all, if you have watched any videos on my channel, you know that I love Ali Hazelwood. So I was really excited for this one because I'm not like a huge paranormal romance girly, but I've read some and I like Ali Hazelwood's voice and her writing style. And I was excited for this one because it's vampire, werewolf, whatever. This was fun. There is some pretty interesting political intrigue going on in the worlds that they're in, which I thought Ali did really well for that being kind of like her first foray into like a fantasy in that way, with having that, like, it's not crazy world building, but it's there. The romance was good. The characters were good. There were some cringe parts, but she still kind of worked this feminist thing in there. I think the main character Mercy, that's her name, right? I think I'm pretty sure that's her name. She knows a lot about computers. She can code. She can hack things. I'd really like to see some more of this type of thing from Allie. I think she did a good job. The Omegaverse smut was mild. It was there, but it was not anything insane like some things that I've read. Take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But yeah, this one was 4 stars for me. I really liked reading it. Next up was another banger, Shark Heart by Emily Hayback. Y'all, this might be in the running for one of my favorite books of the year. Up there with Come and Get It. I had 2 5-star whammies in 1 month, like right back to back. This book was awesome, but from a debut author, by the way. And basically, if you have not heard of this book, it is set in a world where people can develop, I guess, certain genetic mutations that cause them to turn into animals over a course of time. And I thought that was really good metaphor for people who are battling cancer or dementia or Alzheimer's or some other degenerative disease that affects them, like, and changes the trajectory of their life and the loved ones around them without directly having that in the storyline. I thought it was super creative and unique, and it could literally be like, it could resonate with so many people depending on what your situation is. I mean, oh my god, it's so great, it's so genius. But anyway, we follow a newly married couple who are deeply in love with each other, and oh my god, the writing in this is so poetic. We see from both perspectives how the couple feel about each other and how much they love each other. And some of the, like, the very first page that I read was just, it was like a soliloquy that the man was saying to his future wife, and I was blown away. I mean, it was so good. It's a story about marriage, about motherhood, about friendship, about like life in general. It's just, it blew me away. So Shark Heart, please read it. I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. It's so good. We'll see how it holds up for the rest of the year. Next, I want to talk about a series that I read, and I actually did not read them all in March. I read 1 in March and 2 in April, but I'm just going to talk about them here now because that makes sense. So I read the Bright Falls series, Delilah Green Doesn't Care, Ashley Parker Doesn't Fail, and Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. And I really liked these. They were super cute, steamy lesbian rom-coms. And they all had like a really nice plot and some fun shit going on. The characters were fun. They're all kind of interconnected throughout the whole series. And I'm just going to kind of talk about the series as a whole because I think that's what makes most sense. And I literally already said that. I'm just reiterating myself. But anyway, I read Delilah Green first, and I think for me that stays my favorite book because we get introduced to all of the characters in the town and all of this backstory as to why things are the way they are. Whereas the other 2 books are just kind of more nitty gritty in the relationships, and it didn't really work for me because it was just kind of like, this is unnecessary, I think. I don't want to spoil too much, but what's happening in this series is Delilah and Astrid are step siblings. And then Astrid has these 2 friends, Claire and Iris, and they have been friends since high school, but Delilah's always kind of been the outsider because she's not, actually related to Astrid, and there's this whole like evil stepmother thing going on. And so Delilah goes off on her own. She comes back in her book and comes back to Bright Falls because her sister's getting married. But then she starts to fall for her sister's best friend, Claire. And things happen. And then in the next book, which, like I said, I'm not going to spoil too much for you, Astrid has a career opportunity come up, and she is a interior designer, and there is a renovation going on at an inn in the town, I think, or the town over, somewhere nearby. And so she gets hired to be the designer, but she has to work with the carpenter who she does not like, and then things get steamy. And then in the last book, which is Iris's book, she's like the 3rd friend, and she is writing a book, and she's got writer's block. She just got dumped, or I don't know, she's having relationship problems. And then she decides to take a chance and join a theater troupe. And, you know, they're doing a gay version of a Shakespeare play. It's super awesome, super fun. And there's fake dating involved. That one was not my favorite one out of all three. I think it just kind of goes in descending order. I think by the time I read Iris Kelly, I was a little bit over it because probably shouldn't have read them all so close together. But they were super fun, and I listened to all three on audiobook. The audiobook narrator was pretty good. I don't remember her name, but I definitely recommend. And I'm so glad I read them finally because it's been a long time coming. So I rate the series overall as 4 stars, and I think I gave Delilah Green 4 stars, and then Astrid and Iris both 3 stars because I just didn't really enjoy them as much as the first one. After Delilah Green, I read Flawless by Elsie Silver. This one was kind of an impulse, like mood read for me. I kind of like never envisioned myself picking up an Elsie Silver book, but for some reason something came over me and I just really, really wanted to read it. And I had a fun time. Like, I had a fun time. I thought the characters were a little bit, you know, inane. They weren't my favorite characters, and you know, I have issues with. I have to connect to the characters. Okay, the storyline was interesting. The rodeo shit was interesting. There were like, it was just I don't know. I don't know why I wanted to read cowboy romance, but I did, and like it really scratched the itch for me. So I don't know. It was fine. It wasn't my favorite book I've ever read. I gave it 3 stars. But I think I might continue the series in the future. I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon. It was fine. Butcher and Blackbird was the next book I read after this. And another kind of impulse mood read for me. I had got this audiobook on Audible because it was on sale and I heard that the audiobook was really good. Upon reading the audiobook, I think it was fine. There are 2 narrators, one female and one male for the main characters. I heard Books and Lala describe it as it kind of sounds like they're on the phone talking to each other while they narrate this book. And that is, yeah, I agree with that. Because they narrate and they kind of like overlap each other sometimes and it gets a little weird. This was also not my favorite. I think I actually really did not enjoy the violence. I thought it was way too gratuitous and a little bit dark. And they these people have issues that they are not really pursuing in a healthy way. So like I just didn't really get the charm of that. I don't know. I didn't really watch Dexter that much, so I could just be. I'm not trying to be a hater. It's just maybe not for me. Their relationship was pretty satisfying, and it was interesting. Like the plot was definitely interesting, and it kept me on my toes. But I did not care for all of the violence. I don't know. I don't know. The trigger warnings were the best part, honestly, and for some reason, like I say, I didn't like the violence, and then the cookies and cream ice cream thing didn't really like face me that much. I don't know. If you know, you know. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I gave this one 3 stars too. Next up, I read Tender as the Flesh by Augustina Basterica. This is a pretty short horror novel. It was originally written in Spanish because Augustina Basterica is Argentinian. So this one was for the diverse baseline prompt to read a book by a BIPOC author that was been translated. And I did not really take into consideration that Argentinian people are not always BIPOC. There are Latinx, but I think Agustina is white, like Caucasian. So I'm not going to make any assumptions about this. All I'm saying is don't attack me for her not being a BIPOC person. It's the thought that counts because she is Latinx and she did write this book originally in Spanish and it's been translated. So I think that kind of hits the diversity that I was going for. And I'm proud of myself still for like sticking to this challenge and reading diversely. That's kind of the whole point. So I'll do better next time. But yeah, I don't know. I'm glad I read this because it was also on my 24 for 2024 reading list. And basically, this one is set in a dystopian universe where there has been like a plague on animals, so they become inedible because if you eat them, you will like die. So basically, the humans decide that they are not going to eat the animals anymore and kill them all, and instead they're going to raise other humans as livestock, and we're just going to eat humans, be cannibals. So that was super weird. Most of the book was like describing the process of how the humans are processed and turned into meat, and how like where they come from and how they're bred and like all of that stuff, because our main character works in the industry. He's not like super happy with what's happening. So he decides to do something pretty radical, and I'm just going to leave it there because I don't want to spoil the entire book for you. I'm going to go ahead and say that I do not support his decision, and I think what happens in the book and like the plot twist, I mean, or like the climax of the book basically, I just I didn't like it. And like I said, I don't know, the cannibalism doesn't even like, it does phase me, but it like that's not even the worst. Like that was not the worst part of what happened to me. You know, if you've read this book, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you have not, just go with it. This is not. I don't know. I'm not like a huge horror person. It just didn't like get me. I don't know. It was really hard to read because it was so grotesque, basically. I don't know. I am glad I read it. I think I gave this one 3 stars too. Next up, I read Interesting Facts About Space by Emily Austen. This is her sophomore novel as well. I have not read her first debut novel, but I will be after this because I really liked this book. Basically, we follow a woman who is a lesbian, and I think she does something with space computer programming. I don't remember. But she lives on her own, and she calls her mom whenever she gets nervous and tells her interesting facts about space. And so it's not implicitly described that she's neurodivergent or has a disability, but I think there's some subtext there that she like goes to therapy and discovers that she is neurodivergent. And if you are a neurodivergent person, you will totally recognize her inner thought process, because it is told from her point of view, and there's a lot of just internal dialogue and getting to know her character through her life. So again, it's kind of a character-based book, and I really enjoyed that. This reminded me a lot of Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. It actually mirrors that book in many ways. And I really, really liked that book as well. I thought it was super touching and sweet and wholesome, and a great book about mental health representation and neurodivergent representation. And I feel the same way about this book. And she just gets into some kind of zany situations, and the way she handles them and like has inner thought process, I just really related to, and I thought was super funny. So I loved the writing, and I thought the story was fun and the character was fun, and I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was a great time. Last two for March: A Woman Is No Man by Etaf Room. So Etaf Room is a Palestinian American author, and this book was our March book club pick for the library. And I've been wanting to read this for a while because I actually have Evil Eye, which is her sophomore novel, on my shelf, and I haven't read it yet. And this book just basically follows a family of Palestinian women who live in Brooklyn, and it's just kind of an intergenerational family saga about being a Muslim woman in America and what their culture means to them, and kind of how they get brought up in different eras and the expectations that are put on them and all of this stuff. It's very bleak at times. There's some really, really sad shit that happens, and the characters have a hard time dealing with it, and I had a hard time dealing with it. But overall, I think the story is really important, and I'm glad that I read it. I will say that I have a critique about the book feeling not nuanced enough, because basically the whole time, there is this canon that Palestinian women are abused by their husbands, and they just have these horrible, hard, misogynist, embroiled lives, basically. And I'm not a Muslim woman, I'm not Palestinian, I don't know what that's like, but I can't imagine that all Palestinian women have had that experience, especially not all Palestinian Americans. So that was just kind of like the overall tone of the book that like yes, we all go through this. This is just what life is. But, you know, it was just missing some like levity, and I don't know, like literally everything that happened to the main characters was awful. So yeah, and one of them does have like pretty bad depression, and there's a lot going on, but I just feel like the story wasn't well developed enough to have kind of like all sides of it going on. Does that make sense? I don't know. But like I said, I'm really glad I read this because I did get that glimpse into um like this lived experience that Itafram is sharing. I did give it 3 stars. I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But I'm definitely going to give Evil Eye a chance here because I think Itafram's writing has um, a lot of potential. So yeah, I'm glad I read it. The last book I read in March was Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. This one has been on my radar for a few years. I own a copy of it. I'm not sure where it is. Oh, here it is. Yes, Braiding Sweetgrass. This one was also for the diverse baseline prompt. I think I went through all of them. Yeah, for March. Just to read a book by an Indigenous author, and I already had this on my shelf, so I really wanted to read this one. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a botanist, and she's a member of Citizen Potawatomi Nation, and I absolutely loved this book. It was so good. I gave this one 5 stars. It's basically just essays about her life becoming a botanist, her perspectives, and then also all of it is just kind of steeped in her culture. A lot of what she's getting at in her essays is that we need to shift our perspective from just like this give and take to a culture of reciprocity. And I thought that was a super cool idea. And it comes from these native nations that have thrived for so long before we got here and destroyed it all. And, you know, I just really enjoyed reading this because it made me think about how I can embrace a culture of reciprocity in my everyday life. I have always been a big sustainability advocate, and if you care about sustainability or the environment at all, please read this book because it will change your life. And I have nothing but good things to say about this, and I really need to read Gathering Moss because that was her first book. So I loved this. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Robin Wall Kimmerer.
Hey guys, so I'm a little overexposed right now and the audio is different, but that's because when I was filming my video last night, I didn't realize that my microphone cut off halfway through, so I can't use the footage of me talking about the rest of the April books. So I'm just restarting. I'm gonna talk to you about my April books now. So I'm sorry I look a little bit different, but you know, it is what it is. I want to get this video up for you guys. I already spoke to you about the first 2 books that I read in April, which were Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail and Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. So we will move on to the next book, which is Love and Hot Chicken by Mary Eliza Hartong. This one's a debut novel. It's a cute little rom-com. It's like a small town country romp. It takes place in Tennessee. It's about a grieving PhD student who she has to come back to her hometown for her father's funeral. And she ends up staying. She doesn't go back to her PhD program, and she gets involved in a sapphic relationship and a chicken shack. She ends up getting a job at a chicken shack and works as a fry cook there. And at some point there's a pageant that the Chickie Shack does, so they all get involved in that. And her mom gets involved, her best friend is there, there's shenanigans. It reminds me a little bit of Dumplin', which I really liked, and it's just got that small town charm. And it made me want to bust out my Southern euphemisms again. And it's just a really, really lighthearted, good time, and I was pleasantly surprised by it. So I was really happy with this one. I gave it 4 stars. The next book I read was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen, and I really enjoyed this one too. I thought it was pretty well done. I wasn't really in the mood for fantasy when I picked this up, but I knew I wanted to read it because something about it just pulled me toward it. So we're following Freya, who is married to like a fishmonger, and he does not treat her well, and she's doing it out of duty, you know, because this is, I guess, the medieval Norse times. I don't know, it's not really clear when this is, but you know, it's based off of Viking Norse mythology. So all of a sudden we find out that she has some powers, like God-gifted powers. And apparently in this world you can be fated and unfated. If you are unfated, you have like some gifts from some gods and you get to like carve your own destiny, right? But there's been a prophecy that Freya is the shield maiden. Well, there's a prophecy about a shield maiden, and the Jarl, I believe is what you call him, he's like the duke or the king of the land. He discovers Freya and he thinks that she is the shield maiden. So he tells her husband that he's going to let them get a divorce because they're not very happy. And her husband's like, okay. And so he wants to marry Freya. And then basically some shit happens. So she's like thrust into this new life, and she has to kind of deal with the consequences of being this pawn in this political prophecy scheme. And the whole time she's very stubborn and bullheaded, and she doesn't really want to let anyone else tell her what to do. And then there is a love interest, which is weird because he's the Jarl's son, and Freya gets married to the Jarl. So that's a little weird, but I thought the adventure was really fun. There's a lot of action happening. There's a lot of battling. There's a lot of political influences going on, and I thought that the romance kind of took a back seat to all of that, which was interesting because it's being marketed as a fantasy romance. But if you're into that sort of thing, I think you would like this. I think if you liked ACOTAR, you'd probably like this one. I found it similar in many ways. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to reading the next one. I thought the way it ended was a little bit contrived. I kind of saw it coming, but I still think I'm going to enjoy the next book when it comes out. So yeah, I had a good time with this one. I gave it 4 stars, I think. The next book that I read was The Book of Doors by Gareth Brown, and I actually really liked this one. This is another kind of impulsive mood read for me. I saw it show up on a cart at work, and I was like, that book looks really good. The cover is fun, and I really like the end pages that it has. So there's like some really cool art going on with the book. Whoever came up with the cover art is but anyway, that was kind of what pulled me in. But basically we follow a girl, and she works at a bookstore in New York City, and one day this elderly patron that she has like this nice rapport with, he dies in the cafe, but he leaves her this mysterious little book with a note inside, and she figures out that you can use this book to literally open any door. Basically, she can go anywhere she wants, and she kind of gets her friend involved, and then all of this opens up a whole new world that is super dangerous and super exciting. I'm sorry, I shouldn't wave my hands like that. So they make a lot of friends along the way, and a lot of enemies. They travel to all these places, and it gave me like Doctor Who vibes a little bit, which I love Doctor Who. And also the blurb for this one kind of says that if you like The Midnight Library or Addie LaRue, you'll really like this one. I haven't read either of those, but I'm planning to. And now that I've liked this book, I know I'll probably like those too. But anyway, it was super, super fun, super action-packed. There's kind of like this mysterious thing going on. And I think the way that we kind of learn about where the books come from and like how it all works is super mind-blowing. And I think it works pretty well. So I thought it was great, and I gave this one 4 stars too. The next book that I read was Piglet by Lottie Hazel. This one is a debut author, and I was super excited to read this one because it's been on my radar, but I also listened to an episode of Gaze Reading where they had the author on the show, and she talked about her inspiration for the book and kind of why she wanted to write it. Basically, we're following a young woman who is a cookbook publicist. She really loves to cook, and she's about to get married. But she finds out that her husband has betrayed her. But here's the thing. We never learn her real name. She just goes by Piglet the whole time. And we also never learn what her husband did, or, what her fiance did. And that's what the author was kind of talking about in the interview. She was saying that she wanted to play around with the concept of writing a book that doesn't give you that satisfying element and seeing if it still works, right? For me, it didn't really work because I was just so irritated the whole time that we didn't know what was happening. And there was just a lot of disconnect between me and like what was happening in the book, because we follow the main character. It's kind of from her perspective, but we never get to be inside her mind. She's just very, very aloof the whole time, and like you almost can never really anticipate what she's going to do next, which I found to be unsettling. And if we're going to follow a character for the entire book, I would like to at least, learn their motivations. Like, we never really kind of uncover why she's doing what she's doing, and I just found that to be really irritating. but there's definitely some hot girl shit going on and some unhinged girl shit going on. So if you like that type of thing, I think you'll really like this. And I did like this book. It was just, missing that extra exposition, to get me really into the story. It's very experimental for sure. I'm glad that the author did this. I think it's super cool what she's like trying to go for. And the food writing was absolutely delectable. If nothing else, I came away from this book being really impressed by that, and I will definitely read Lottie Hazel again. So I gave this one 3 stars, but it was what it was. It's a debut book, it took its chances, and I think it's really cool what she's trying to do with that. Next, we have Good Material by Dolly Alderton. Oh my god, I loved this book. I did not give it a 5-star because, let me tell you why. When I was reading it, I felt like I was literally learning about real people. And, I just didn't really get that 5-star feeling like I did with her memoir. But I loved it. I did give it 4 stars. It was fantastic. We're doing this from a male's perspective, which I thought was really, really cool for Dolly to do, because she also went on Gaze Reading and talked about this book, and she talks about it, how she wanted to kind of write from a male perspective to bring some perspective to what people go through when they go through a breakup, and how, we're all not so dissimilar after all, And I really like the way that she wrote him. I think his voice was very like self-centered, but also he had like, a lot of important experiences. And, we also do learn a little bit about the ex-girlfriend's perspective. So I think with that as a whole, it did really, really well. Like, it wrapped itself up so well, and I just felt for these characters. So that was really awesome that she could make me do that, especially about a man, okay? I really, really liked it, and I gave it 4 stars. I thought, I will read anything this woman writes, and I need to read her backlist, so yeah, Good Material was awesome. The last 3 books that I read in April were my diverse baseline challenge books, and the first one was 7 Days in June. The prompt was to read a book by a BIPOC author with chronic illness representation. And Eva, in the main character in this book, has she has like really debilitating chronic migraines, and she calls it her invisible disability. So that was really cool representation to see, because I have migraines, not with aura the way that she does, but I, to an extent, feel some of that pain sometimes. So I thought that was pretty cool to see that like represented in the book, because I've never read about a character with a migraine before. But anyway, this book is, I'm sure you know what it's about. It is about Eva and Shane, who had like this high school summer fling, and they have not been able to stop thinking about each other ever since. And they are both accomplished writers now, and it seems like they're kind of writing to each other and about each other through their work. So one day they finally meet, like 14 years later or something, after Eva has had a kid, and Shane is like going through recovery, and he's doing all these things, and yeah, so you know, sparks fly. But my problem with this was, I thought that the basis for their relationship was so toxic and problematic, because without spoiling too much for you, they do meet when they're teenagers, and they have, it's literally like just a couple days fling, and they just the whole time like get high with each other and get fucked up. And I don't really see how you can build the basis of a relationship like that, personally, you know. I understand that they have this connection and like understand each other, maybe like nobody else does, but still, I just thought that it was a little bit icky. Like I just didn't like the way that their relationship started out. So I just felt a little bit kind of like, you know, the whole time that they were, you know, continuing to get together. But that's just me. I don't know. I feel like I kind of wasn't as enamored by this as a lot of people are, and that's totally fine. But I did think the writing was pretty fun. It's a little millennial for me, but I'm definitely keen to pick up some more of Tia Williams' books, because I really see what she's doing here, and I understand why this book is a massive success. There's a lot of representation that is done pretty well in this book, and I like that both of the characters end up like coming into themselves and being really strong on their own, and they do have a mature relationship toward the end. So like, you know, all that being said, there's a lot of really good stuff about this book. And the story itself was pretty fun and like engaging, so I was able to read it pretty quickly. And then this is also one of my 24 and 2024 picks, if you didn't know that, so we did good with that too. I gave it 3 stars just because I was a little bit underwhelmed. Like, I've been anticipating reading this for such a long time, and it didn't really live up to the hype for me. So that is the reason why. The next book I read is to fulfill the diverse baseline prompt of read a book by a BIPOC author about colonization. I'm going to give you 1 second to guess what book I picked. It's Babel. Y'all, this is my biggest reading endeavor that I've taken on since reading The Pillars of the Earth. And this book is not quite as long, but it's very, very dense. And I've had this on my shelf since 2022, so it was high time that I read it. I don't think I read this at the right time though, because it just took me too long. And I ended up kind of speeding through the last 50% of the book, because once you get halfway in, things kind of take a turn for the worst, and I wasn't really liking the way that the plot changed. I don't know. I almost felt like in the beginning there was not enough action, and in the end there was too much. It wasn't very well balanced for me. But anyway, if you are unfamiliar what Babel is about, I'm just going to give you a little blurb. This takes place in a fictionalized version of Oxford in the 1800s, where there is an institution called Babel. It's a very prestigious institution because they have this like silver working magic that you can only use by translating. So they teach students to translate at Babel. But the thing is, they like to recruit foreign students who English is not their first language so they can learn more, and they exploit those students in a very imperialist, colonialist way, racist way too. So yeah, there's a lot of really problematic ideologies that are at play in this book, and we learn a lot about colonialism in China in the 1800s and like what's going on there. And I think that's really cool because if you are familiar with R.F. Kuang at all, she is a scholar. Like, she has 2 master's degrees in Chinese history, and she's getting her PhD at Yale right now, and she's like under 30. Like, she's a very, very impressive woman, and I do like her writing. Like, she's a great novelist, okay? I will say that this book kind of felt like she was just showing off for us, and the characters suffered a little bit from that, especially Robin, because I feel like he was literally just a delivery system for the plot. Like, he didn't actually have that much substance to him because he changed up so much. That's my opinion. Okay, I think that's what happened. They could have used a little bit more work. The plot could have probably used a little bit more finagling because I got bored, okay? I know a lot of people probably say that. And I'm just disappointed because I wanted to be so engaged and enthralled by this book, but it just wasn't. So yeah, that's Babel. I don't know. I might have more thoughts later. I just want to tell you that now because I'm a little disappointed in my reading experience with this, but since I own this book, I can definitely pick it up again one day, and I feel like I probably will because I want to understand. And I was confused the whole time. Like, until things started happening at the very end. I don't know. I can't give away anything. But let it be known that the subtitle, not this one, but the other one, it will make perfect sense. It will make perfect sense, okay? That's all I'm gonna say. I gave Babel 3 stars because, again, like 7 Days in June, this is a super hyped book for me. I've been wanting to read it for a long time, and it did not hit, okay? But I did enjoy reading it. I'm glad that I read it, you know? So yeah. The last book I read in April is Eyeliner by Zara Hankir, and this book was super fun. It's basically a cultural history of eyeliner, so we follow eyeliner and its origins throughout time and history and geographic location. We learn about ancient Egypt. We learn about the Middle East. We learn about African tribes who use it in mating rituals. We learn about cholas. We learn about geishas. We learn about Indian classical dancers. We learn about drag queens. And we learn about Amy Winehouse. And we learn about influencers on social media. And I just thought that was really cool. Like, I liked the way that she kind of split it up by culture. And we get a lot of well-researched history and cultural references. And I feel like the author really put in the work to this book. I enjoyed listening to it. I listened to it on audiobook. The narrator wasn't the best, but I listened to it sped up, so it was fine. I have a pretty special connection to eyeliner because I wore it a lot when I was in middle school, and I thought I was the coolest bitch ever. So I totally get the hype of, like, you know, why eyeliner is so popular. I do not wear it anymore. But I used to be really good at it. Books like this are a really cool way to learn history and cultural influences without having to, like, be super bored by reading a history book. I just think the vehicle of eyeliner was a really cool way to learn more about other cultures. I gave this one 3 stars, I think, because, I don't know, it just felt like 3 stars to me. It wasn't my favorite thing that I've ever read, but I really had a good time, and I like nonfiction like this. It's fun to discover, like, cool nonfiction that is engaging and, like, fun to listen to or read. So yeah, that was this one, and it was great. Sorry about the, you know, little intermission and the different video going on. But yeah, that was what I finished in April. So overall, I read 23 books in March and April recently. It's May now and I'm reading more books now, but I'm super excited to just kind of get back on the wagon and keep making videos for y'all. Life happens and it's just gonna keep happening, so I'm gonna try my best. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, just leave me a comment about what you enjoyed about it, if you've read any of these books, what you think about my thoughts. I'd love to hear it. Give me a like, give me a subscribe, and join me next time for my next video. I would love to see you. So yeah, that's all for me. I'm gonna sign off now, and hopefully this video worked because I do not want to film it again.